in my experience, the two things that kill business owners' ability to build wealth independently of their business, which I think is important. So build a business, but the purpose of a business is to give you more life. It's not to suck the very life out of you. And the way it gives you more life is you build wealth as you go. If you can take money from a business once you've got that stability, and then you can claim corporation tax back and invest that money and build a future pot, then you're creating two businesses in one. The business of your wealth and the business of your business. Now, if your business can do both, you get a recurring income business that you can sell or keep and pay you a constant recurring income. That's the best of both worlds.
Welcome to this week's episode of Wealth Talk. My name's Christian Rodwell, the Membership Director for WealthBuilders, joined today by our founder, Mr. Kevin Whelan. Hello, Kevin.
Hello, Chris. Just having a little fiddle with my phone, but switched off and focused and ready for action, Chris.
That's
what
it.
are we talking about today?
We're locked in for the next 30 minutes or so. Well, today we're focusing on one of your favourite asset classes, I know, which is the business pillar. And we speak to people every week, Kevin, don't we? Our members and non-members who are at different stages of their business. And of course, we work with existing business owners of all levels. And of course, people still in jobs, but wanting to transition and perhaps have an idea, but not quite sure where to go with that.
It's interesting, and yes, you're right. It's a fascinating area, and the reason that I love business more than any of the pillars, not to the exclusion of other pillars, because it wouldn't be right to do that, because one of anything is risky, one business is risky, which is why we always suggest people look at two businesses, either the business they're trading and operating and a business of building the wealth. And we realize and recognize that often it's the business owners wearing all the hats, spinning all the plates and juggling all the balls that sometimes don't get round to doing things that they need to do. But enough of that. I mean, the key thing for me, Chris, and while I know you want to talk about the specific, right, where did the ideas come from and how do you create those ideas and how do you validate those ideas? I think it's worthwhile as we look at the whole jigsaw puzzle to remind ourselves that everything good is created twice. First in the head of anybody who creates it, and then secondly through execution. So you've got to start with what's in the head. And, the way I would frame it, like any good educator, is by, we like a good quote, don't we, at WealthBuilders?
We sure do.
How about this quote? And you tell me where it comes from, right? All the world's a stage, and all the men and women are merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and today we're going to talk about their entrances, but just as important to talk about their exits. And one man, it should be one man or one woman, of course, but it was written a long time ago, in his time plays many parts. It's a Shakespearean quote, of course, from As You Like It. And it's often called the 7 Ages of Man, the quote. And I'd use that quote deliberately to talk about, at least as an introduction, to the 7 stages of business. And men or women obviously can create businesses, and so there's no issue with that. Shakespeare's time was different. But the point is, the value of a business is not restricted or hindered by the conventions of, let's say, the stock market or the interest rate market or the price of a market, because the essence behind business is solving a problem that adds value. And there's no limit to how you can do that. And if you find a problem that's big enough and a solution that's worth finding that's valuable enough, the ROI or the return on your investment is absolutely unlimited. It's unchecked by anything, which is why it's so much easier if you've got the right thoughts in place at the beginning to not just create a business, Chris, but also to buy a business from someone else who's at the different stage of business that once you recognize those stages. So I'm happy to do a whistle stop on the 7 S's. If I get my teeth in today, the 7 S's or the 7 stages of business. And then because we couldn't give all of them justice in a 30-minute podcast, Chris, we probably best focus on maybe one or two of those stages.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah.
Does that sound all right to you?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So the 7S's are almost a bit like the 7 ages of man. They flow from, germination of an idea right the way through to the exit. And sometimes the exit is very painful, like a death, but sometimes it's planned, and that's the idea. So the first is the seed. So the first S is the S for seed. And I'm fascinated by the seed of an idea. And that often is the precursor to all businesses, because you can't have a business and you can copy a business. But if you create one, there's always an idea. And even if you copy another business, your idea is how I could do that better. And it's often that's really good thinking, because not always the first mover in a space that creates true wealth. It's often the second or third movers who then, and that's true in all sorts of industries as we've seen. Not the first inventor of a computer makes the money, not the first inventor of the light bulb makes the money, and so on through history. But the seed is everything. And I think it's useful for you and I to talk about wealth dynamics, maybe, Chris, and where that seed starts and how you begin to see, are you a creator of seeds and ideas? Do you have 50 ideas before breakfast and 2 at the weekend? Or are you the sort of person who kind of scratches your head and watches in awe as other people create ideas, or get frustrated with your husband, wife, spouse, partner, business partner, whoever, because either they lack ideas or they're so full of them? And there's a danger in both of them, isn't there? Not having enough and having too many are both danger signs. So that's the seed. Once you got the seed and you planted the seed, you go start, right? So the seed doesn't do anything on its own. And so many people tell me, oh no, I had this idea. And then it's in the marketplace, sometime after that. Well, you've got to start. So it's to dare to do something, isn't it? You've got to take the seed and plant it. And that start is the next step. And the starting point is where all the risk is, where all the danger is, where you've got to think about how to prove, validate the value in the idea. I know you've done some really good work for our members, Chris, on what you call, I think, the minimum viable product, which I would reframe as minimum valuable product, because it has to create value. It's not whether the product works, is will people buy it because it solves a problem that they want solving in the world. From the startup, the third S is stability. The beginning of any business is always chaos because you're doing it yourself. And as I said earlier on, you're juggling everything, you're wearing all the hats. So getting stability is stability of cash flow. Now, at this point, we're not talking about the difference between cash flow, as we call it, recurring income cash flow, albeit, wow, if you can start a business with the idea in mind that's already got recurring income inbuilt from day one, what a fabulous business that would be. But most businesses that I see and business owners I meet who buy the Wealth Coach book or follow what I do specifically, then they're often at a stage of chaos. They haven't quite got that stability. And what they need to do for sure is to get the clarity of the niche they're in, the marketing that they're working with, to establish the right flow of leads through to prospects, from prospects through to customers, from customers through to how to retain those customers, to their profit margin. All of the things that I think, if we refer back, it's probably an episode which is really good from Action Coach. Do you remember that one, Chris? Way back, it might have been Chris Henry. Did that one? Talked about the 5 ways.
Yeah.
The ways you can focus to get yourself stable. Anyway, then of course, like any business, once you've got it working, you know how it works. You can document all the processes so that you can now begin to see the business as a possibility of working without you doing any of the work. So working without you is a key part of the success of an ideal business, which is combination of being outstanding in a niche, creating recurring income, and the business being able to work without you. They're the 3, sweet spots in all business. But once you systemize that, whether you document the processes, get somebody to help you, use VAs, get external help. Then, of course, you need the team to run that, and then you've got yourself a business that can scale. So the fifth S is scale. How do you turn that into scale? Now, not everybody wants scale, but you just want that stability in those systems to work so that you can have it managed without you having to scale it. But the idea is it's possible to scale it. And if you know you can do it, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you license it to somebody else? Why wouldn't you franchise it for somebody else? Why would you not let somebody else copy it and give you a royalty? So use IP. So the idea of building the seed, the start, the stability, and the systems is to give you something that is capable of being delivered consistently. And then when you can do that, you can sell it. You don't have to sell it, but if you do sell it, you'll sell it at a premium if you've got those three essential ingredients in place. Otherwise, for the most part, business owners don't get a premium. And in fact, the vast majority of business owners, and I do a presentation on this, Chris, to coaches and those people who serve business owners well, that only 5,000 businesses in the UK a year sell for life-changing money. In other words, £1 million or more, which might not give you everything in life, but even if you invested that and got 5%, you get 50 grand a year. So if you get 50,000 quid a year from the sale of something, that's a reasonable business. And only 5,000 businesses a year do that. And as a percentage of the total business population in the UK, which is 5 million, do the maths. It's 0.1. It's not 1, it's 0.1. So most business owners actually get caught up in a trap of the busyness and the doingness, and their business isn't sellable. So in the end, and the seventh S, which is the unfortunate S, I'm afraid, is the business gets scrapped. The business isn't sold. It disappears and it dies. And this is what happened with my father, which is why I became very passionate about helping business owners, because I saw the very challenges in the work that consumed business owners. Even if they've had a great idea and they started it, they got stable, they made it work, even if they had recurring income, unless you've got a process to hand it over at some point, then the business unfortunately can die. And if it dies, the recurring income, if there is any, is lost, the legacy is lost, which is why there are so many businesses now, Chris, being bought from baby boomers who simply haven't done a good job of putting all the S's in place, and they have to let their business go for pennies in the pound, and often for nothing. So hopefully that was a little trot through the 7 S's, Chris. And while there's always challenges, and I think I'm kind of minded to remind our audience of the wise words of the CEO of, who's it again? Go Henry.
Okay.
Henry. She said the number one skill of a business owner is resilience. And so you have to be resilient to make sure you know where you are in the stages, to push yourself through a plan and not get stuck at the stage you're at. And that's how we want to help business owners do that, so they can sell their business or exit their business at a premium, and they get real true value for the blood, the sweat, and the years that they put in. And that's why I'm passionate about business owners. I am one myself, and proud to be working with you, Chris. And so you're a part business owner with me and WealthBuilders, along with our co-director, Paul Brooks. And we think about these things all the time, and we need to be resilient because we sometimes get a little bit of punch in the face ourselves as well when we're trying to work out what is it that holds people back from doing the right thing. Is it apathy? Is it arrogance? What is it? And constantly trying to find ways to permeate a quarter of an inch between somebody's ears and try and help them to not settle for trading time for money, but to do something to create recurring income. So if you're going to go for a business, please look for a business that's got recurring income. And there are so many businesses out there that you could see that help you identify that. But listen, I've been waffling on, as I always do. for so long now, Chris, we haven't really got stuck into anything yet.
Well, I've been listening intently, and I think one of the things that we know that holds people back is overwhelm, and that's the very reason why we put these podcasts together to try and break things down and make them more easy, and these wonderful frameworks that you continue to come up with, Kevin. And I'm just going to recap on that. So you have the 7 S's there from start to finish of a business. So number 1 was the seed, which is the idea. Number 2, the startup phase. Number 3 is stability. Then number 4 was systemizing. Number 5 is scaling. Then we had selling. And unfortunately, in many cases, number 7, the business ends up getting scrapped. Yeah.
So 7, that's the framework. You're not aiming for number 7, but you need to avoid 7. But, as is my want, I tend to create things to reflect the 7 pillars and the 7 F's of property and the 7 B's of SaaS. So, if I've snuck one in there just to make 7, allow me a little degree of latitude, but I am trying to preserve my own IP because that has some value. So, I'll change these things I do over time, but for the context of a good business discussion or even the framework for a series of business discussions, Chris, I think there'd be a decent framework there.
Yeah. And we know you may be on the move right now, driving, running, doing something, and you're thinking, oh, that's good. I want to remember that. Well, we've put together a checklist for you. So there's a freebie for today's episode. And not only will it summarize those 7 S's there of a business, but we'll also put together a validation of your new business idea. So a checklist that you can go through if you're at a stage now where you think you've got a good idea, but you're just not quite sure how to get to that minimum valuable product that Kevin talked about there. So head to wealthbuilders.co.uk/validate your business idea, and you can download that checklist. And Kevin, let's look at some of those early steps. So particularly seed and startup, because we can't go through all of them in detail today, but I'm sure we can revisit in future episodes. And in particular, you mentioned wealth dynamics. So we've talked about wealth dynamics since the start of this podcast. We've been going since 2019. And for anyone that's not aware of wealth dynamics, and it's an online assessment. It was put together by Roger Hamilton. We use it within our Wealth Builders membership. So our members get a copy of that. And it's available to purchase. We've got that on the Wealth Builders website as well. But essentially, to summarize, there are 4 main frequencies which we kind of fit in. And we all have a combination of all 4. But you've got your creators at the top, that dynamo energy. So that's typically where we think about starting new things, that creative energy. But the key with wealth dynamics is that not everybody is naturally a creative person. So therefore, you could add value by actually looking at something and saying, well, there's an existing idea, but perhaps I could almost take it apart and put it back together again better. So you're someone who's very focused on the detail, perhaps the process, the systems. So the value comes in actually your own, ability to look at something differently. And equally, it could be your ability to actually bring the right people together. So there could be a really good business idea already running, but perhaps it doesn't have the right team or the right skill sets. And that's your value that you can bring to that. So it doesn't always have to be about thinking about a new idea, does it?
That's a really good point. And you're quite right. And I think Louise Hill also mentioned that, not necessarily wealth dynamics, but in many respects that, she had the idea, or she co-founded the idea, but her skill was the detail, but not necessarily the people. And so she surrounded herself and got the right people in the team. Now that's fine. At the beginning, when you're bootstrapping your business, you're not always in the right place to choose the right team. Often, it's somebody close to you, it's somebody in your family or somebody because you don't have time to do this. But definitely do wealth dynamics. I mean, we use wealth dynamics in our business as we recruit people. And while it's not a recipe for 100% success, it pretty much helps you identify where does somebody fit into the business. So if we wanted someone to manage the side of the business, Chris, that was the membership area, where they were constantly having dialogue and feedback and helping members, you wouldn't want someone who's an introvert. You wouldn't want someone who, who's not willing to pay attention to detail or isn't full of people energy, loving and getting energy from being connected to people. So doing your wealth dynamic is a real good tool, not just to assess who you are and where your best value can come, but also who you're working with and who's your spouse, who's your partner, who's your business partner. And sometimes that can be a shocker when you discover actually you don't want to be the same. Two creators working together, which is, more, my energy is more on the creation side, isn't it, Chris? And yours is more on the getting things done side. And if we didn't have that, you just have two creators constantly battling for, oh, I've got an idea. Oh, I've got another one. And then things wouldn't get done. And we see that. And while it's a joke, in reality, it does happen. And we see people changing their mind very quickly and not able to get to stability, and certainly never systemizing anything, because rather than systemize something, they get bored with it and want to change it and create a whole new business around it. So you have to know who you are in order to know how you are best placed to either be in a business as an employee or as a team member, or to create one or be part of one that you own yourself. So it's a fascinating area, and I encourage anybody to go find their wealth dynamic and look at what it is.
Well, how's about we add a 25% discount coupon on the checklist? So for anyone who wants to download the checklist for today's episode, they can also take Wealth Dynamics. Let's do that.
If that gives value to people and helps them discover who they are, why the heck not?
Yeah. Okay. So I will add that on to today's checklist as well. One other area, Kevin, I did a workshop for our members this week. It was all around joint ventures, which is one of the other asset classes. Yeah. But joint ventures and business go hand in hand, don't they? And it'd be good to get your opinion, because I'm of the view that if you're starting out a new business, it's a good idea to find someone to work with. I'm a fan of that. I think you share, so many skill sets. You share some of the risk as well. You can share, various different resources. People have different views. You're obviously sharing profit as well if you go into partnership with someone. But what are your thoughts?
It's an interesting one, Chris, and I can see why some people would be sitting on the horns of a dilemma there. On the one hand, the creators often demand control. I know for the longest time in business, I've always been the controller of the business and owning all the shares, for example. And if you can get a team around you where the work that you need to get done is relatively easy to do, so you can manage that, that's perfectly fine. But I agree with you that certainly we couldn't have done WealthBuilders without that. Couldn't have done without the collaboration of you and Paul and others in the team. And I value that and actually enjoy that. And I'm not concerned about parting with some of the cake. I think the cake is going to be much bigger and is much more enjoyable and fun to do, because business can be isolating in some respects. We often see business owners who are making all the decisions. They're making the hiring, the firing, the finance decisions, the sales decisions, the marketing decisions, all the decisions they've got. And therefore, they're in that rarefied air of not really being able to have an honest, equal to equal conversation. And I think that's where either you find that externally through coaching or mentoring or some form of buddy or guidance, and we'll often do that within WealthBuilders, encourage people to buddy up so that they're not in business together necessarily, although that can happen, it can lead to that, but just for accountability. And there are many groups where business owners can talk at a level that they don't want to share their thoughts necessarily with their team. They want to share thoughts with people who are having the same problems as them. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't know. I don't think there's a formula that says you should or shouldn't do it with others. I think it's probably for each individual to decide that, in the same way as they'll decide which assets they want to go for, and how they want to do that is fundamentally different. The only thing I would say is I have made mistakes when I've involved other people as co-directors and didn't actually document the expectations well enough. So when you're going into business with people, it's tempting, as you say earlier on there, to share the risk, share the cost. But if you don't have a very clear delineation of who's doing what's their expectation, what's their perfect flow, so that everybody in the business is doing what's right for them and what's right for the business, it can be difficult. And I've made mistakes there, and it was poor documentation, and that's really because I didn't have the tempo energy to do that. I trusted, and I'd say that's a danger. Just in the middle of, should you do it on your own? Should you do it with someone else? Well, if you're going to do it with somebody else, whether it's a joint venture or whether it's a co-director, good documentation, mapping out expectations would be an important part of that, I think.
And all these points are in the checklist that you can download. Just head to wealthbuilders.co.uk/validate your business idea. And one other, just before we wrap things up, potentially, Kevin, is time. Because if you haven't got time, then you probably shouldn't be thinking about starting a business. And we know that time is one of the biggest challenges when it comes to wealth building overall.
Well, absolutely true. I mean, we could do a whole episode just on time. I think part of the curious dilemma, or the paradox actually, that happens in many cases with business, and again, I can see it from experience, not just with my own father, but sometimes not falling into the trap myself. And we had conversation, you, me, and Paul, just recently, and kind of re-emphasized to each other the importance of family time. Because all too often, when you're doing everything, you can create so much pressure on your time that the business needs you to make a decision, or the business needs you to do something, that your time for other things in your life, whether it's your health, your relationships, your family, your finances, they can suffer. And we see that with business owners all the time, where they don't do their wills, they don't do their powers of attorney, they actually spend all the time making money, and then they bank the money in a business bank account, and they don't shop around to get any interest on that. Or they pay so much corporation tax when they could claim that corporation tax back and still have access to it. So because they're so busy, they don't find the time to evaluate. And sometimes, and this is the big danger, certainly, Chris, is one of the things I look for in talking to a business is how open are they? How open-minded are they to seeing other people helping? Because that's critical. Because in my experience, the two things that kill business owners' ability to build wealth independently of their business, which I think is important. So build a business, but the purpose of a business is to give you more life. It's not to suck the very life out of you. And the way it gives you more life is you build wealth as you go. So in the same way as employees naturally do, they save money in a pension, for example. I'm not advocating pensions as the only solution, but if you can take money from a business once you've got that stability, and then you can claim corporation tax back and invest that money and build a future pot, then you're creating two businesses in one. The business of your wealth and the business of your business. Now, if your business can do both, you get a recurring income business that you can sell or keep and pay you a constant recurring income. That's the best of both worlds. But most business owners don't do that. They end up really working really hard, harder in many respects in a business than they did in a job, because they had a structure before. Now they're creating the structure, but they've got a job nonetheless. And unfortunately, they very quickly can get defensive about that. And it's one of the big A's. There's two A's I try and avoid, Chris, in my life when I meet people, because I like to spend time with open-minded people, is arrogance and apathy. If people are arrogant, they think they know everything. I know all about that. Okay, but what have you done? Yeah, I know all about that. Okay, but what have you actually done? Knowledge doesn't mean anything. Knowledge is freely available. It's the action around the knowledge that's critical. So, sorry to beat my chest about that one, but I don't like arrogance in any way, shape, or form. And I recognize it because I think I was arrogant at the beginning of my business journey and refused help, didn't willingly ask for it. And I only softened over time, having made mistakes and realized actually it's actually more enjoyable. And it's the result that counts, not that you have to do it on your own and, be Superman and wear your vest outside your pants. That's not the key measure of a successful business, is how important do you look. It's how successful is your business and how balanced are you in your life. So I think it's really important. And apathy is the killer, because they say they're going to do something, they don't get around to it. And the to-do list never gets to done. And it keeps going round and round and round and round, and they never do it. And once we see that, we stop, don't we? We're not going to pester them. They're never going to get out of that loop. So we leave them to their own devices, which invariably means their business will not get to the sell stage, the premium value of a business. And why put yourself through all that extra stress and energy and time and money and risk if you're not going to get a premium reward for it? Most business owners sadly do not. And I feel that very passionately, Chris, and I want to serve business owners well. So we're looking for, as always, open-minded, non-arrogant, non-apathetic people who recognize, yeah, I'm falling into a trap here. Help me, guys, because that help is going to save themselves, save their family, and hopefully save their business from a fate worse than scrapping.
Yeah. Well, if you fit that profile, come and join us. No, we love to work with business owners, and we love helping people who've got great ideas as well. And I know we've had many successes over the years of people who, at that very stage of, what do you think? And now we see them with communities of thousands of members and running very successful businesses and enjoying, good income from their business, which you say is, of course, one of the key things. So just recapping on those three main points we covered at the beginning, Kevin, that, number one, you really got to look at a niche market. Number two, focus on the recurring income in the business. And number three, think about how that business could work without you. And that's either going to be through teams or it's going to be through systemization. So, if you focus on those three core things, that will stand you in good stead. But we've really just kind of scraped the surface today, Kevin, looking at some of the initial concepts and ideas. So I think we've definitely got room to revisit those other S's on some future episodes.
When you talking about things that often get overlooked, where's the review this week?
Oh my goodness me! Yeah, thank you for the reminder. Yes, we've had more reviews coming in, as we always do. So heading over to Trustpilot, and if you ever want to pop over and search the WealthBuilders profile on Trustpilot, please go ahead and see what some of our members and clients are saying about us. And this week, Terry has left a lovely review saying, WealthBuilders has been extremely educational and supportive to me and my family in many financial aspects, but in particular during my transition to a SSAS pension. Gary Whelan has been a fantastic coach to me with well-informed step-by-step guidance and always able to answer questions and provide insights that I simply would not have been aware existed or considered myself. Thank you, WealthBuilders, and particularly Gary, and I look forward to continuing working with you.
All right. Well, another Whelan getting a commendation. So good for Gary, who's my younger brother, and we love having Gary around in the business as a former IFA and a SSAS expert. So he's often at the front edge. Actually, we sound very alike. If you were to ever listen to Gary, we don't look alike at all, but we definitely sound alike. He's very, very different to me in so many different ways, but a pleasure to have him in the team, and we love working with him. So, well, hopefully we pass that message on to Gary, and hopefully, many of you will get to speak to him, because that transition to SSAS is really, I think there's a good point in there, Chris, not just about what Gary's good work has done, showing things that he wouldn't have seen for himself, Terry, but I think that's the beauty of having a coach as well. And certainly when it comes to wealth is people like us see things. It's all we do, right? All we do is look for wealth ideas and opportunities. So we see things other people don't see. And my role in the company is the visionary. And the definition of a visionary is someone who sees what other people don't. So I see things and I create things and I curate things in a way that is only to help people achieve their wealth faster, safer, and more enjoyably than if they did it on their own. So I'll stick to my principles and I'll keep doing that. We'll hopefully, recruit more people using wealth dynamics and help our business and businesses grow, and hope you've had the seed planted today in a way you can either start a business or put a framework around your own business to make it more successful in the future, where you can create wealth from it, or you can get a flow of cash to your life that you build wealth from it. Either way is fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a final reminder, if you want to download the 15-step checklist to help you validate your new business idea, head to wealthbuilders.co.uk/validate your business idea. And Kevin, we will be back same time, same place next week.
Yes, indeed. And until then, my friend, see ya.